May only the truth be spoken and only the truth be heard. Amen. We are nearing the end of our Lenten journey. And this week we will mark the spring equinox. And today is the feast day of St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. And so I want to tell you a story that takes us from Advent to Easter, from winter to spring. Now, like all good stories in the Bible, and all good Irish stories, this story is all true. Or so they say. At any rate, it's my story, and I'm sticking to it. The young man stood on the straw-covered floor of the barn, watching his breath form tiny clouds, then disappear as he tried to control his breathing. Outside, it was snowing. It had started over 24 hours ago, turning the barren landscape of late winter into a shaken snow globe. White everywhere, roads closed, electricity and telephone lines down. As dusk had gathered, the young man had made his way from farmhouse to barn, carrying a kerosene lamp along a narrow pathway he had managed to keep shoveled. Entering the barn, the dusty smells of hay and animals rose to greet his nostrils. He stood now, one hand on his crooked hip, the other combing through his carrot-colored hair, watching his prize Holstein cow's body heaving. Her calf was in breech position and needed help. He didn't know what to do. He had watched his father deliver calves in the past, but his father had never told him how to do it. 2 years ago, the young man had returned from the war, limping from a shrapnel wound and deaf from a bomb that had blasted out his eardrums. His mother had died while he was away, and his father had stopped speaking, first from grief and then from a stroke. But his childhood sweetheart had taken him into her love, wounds, deafness, and all. Soon she was round and ripe like a beautiful fall pumpkin. It was when she felt the first pangs of labor that they realized the telephone lines were down. The midwife would not be coming. "I'll be all right," she said, speaking slowly and directly to him so he could read her lips. "Go and deal with the cow. When I start yelling, you'll know it's time to come back." "But how will I know you're yelling?" he asked. "You will know," she said. "Now go." The old black sheep stood in her stall in the barn, watching the young man. She had watched him grow from bouncing young lamb to sturdy young ram, watched him go off to war, watched him come back, broken, and yet somehow still whole. "You're going to have to reach in and straighten the calf's legs," she said quietly. Startled, the young man looked around. "Who's there?" he asked. "I am," said the old black sheep. "But you're talking." "Of course I'm talking. I've always talked. It's only now when you can't hear human voices that you can hear mine." "Why don't I hear the cow talking?" "She doesn't talk much. And besides, if you were in labor, you wouldn't be talking either, for goodness sake." "I don't know what to do," said the young man. "Of course you do. Just reach in like you saw your father do, like he did for me when my lambs were breech. Reach in, straighten the calf's legs, and pull. The cow will do the rest." Rolling up his sleeve, the young man stuck his hand and then his arm into the wet, mucky warmth of the cow's rear end, feeling for the calf's legs. "Got him," he shouted. "That's right. Now straighten them and pull," said the old black sheep. A few moments later, the calf lay on the barn floor, glistening, beautiful, and brand new. Its eyes fluttered open as the cow turned to lick it with her rough tongue, nudge it to its feet and towards her milk-laden udder. She was beaming with pride. "Now," said the old black sheep, "you have another delivery to attend to." "I don't know what to do," said the young man. "Of course you do. Now go." As the young man hurried from the barn, his kerosene lamp sputtered out, but a light surrounded him, catching the still falling snow in its glow. Suddenly, he felt a pressure on his chest. It was the kind of pressure he'd felt in the foxhole during the war, when his hearing had been blasted out of him, when his buddies lay screaming and dying all around him. He broke into a run. Bursting through the back door of the farmhouse, he found the young woman leaning heavily on the kitchen table, dressed only in her soft flannel nightie, a puddle of water at her feet. Steam rose from the kettle on the stove, on the great crackling beast of the wood stove. The smell of fresh bread she had baked earlier in the day still hung faintly in the air. As a contraction roared through her body, she turned to him and yelled, "The baby's in breech position. I don't know what to do." This time, it was his mother's voice that came to him out of his deep memory. When he was about 6 years old, he had asked her, "Mummy, how was I born?" "Well," she had started, "you were a breech baby. Your head was up inside of me, and your feet were down, when you should have been upside down." But the midwife knew what to do. Taking the young woman by the hand, he led her to the daybed by the stove and settled her in. "I'll be right back," he said gently. Grabbing the grain sack from its nail by the back door, he yanked the door open, stepped a few feet out into the white blackness, and scooped armfuls of snow into the bag. Back inside, he found the water bottle on the kitchen washstand and filled it with water from the kettle on the stove. "That's cold," shouted the young woman as he placed the bag of snow at the top of her belly. "And that's hot," she said, as he held the water bottle to her belly's bottom. "And then," said his mother, "the midwife began to sing." "But I can't sing anymore," said the young man. "Who are you talking to?" asked the young woman before another contraction seized her body. Placing his face down near the water bottle, in a quavering, out-of-tune voice, the young man began to sing. "Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool?" Let's help him. Yes, sir, 3 bags full, 1 for my master and 1 for my dame, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane. Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. That was terrible. If we're going to turn this baby, we need to sing gently but strongly and choir in harmony. Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. 1 for my master and 1 for my dame, and one for the little boy who lives down the lane. Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. As he sang, the young man massaged the young woman's belly around and down, trying with cold and warmth, voice and touch to turn the baby. Baba, white sheep, have you any wool? Yes, dear, 3 bags full. 1 for your sweater, and 1 for your rug, and 1 for your blanket to keep you warm and snug. Baba, white sheep, have you any wool? Yes, dear, 3 bags full. Over and over and over he sang, until the baby's turning, said the young woman. I can feel the baby turning. Squeezing himself behind her on the daybed, the young man wrapped her in his legs and laid her back on his chest. Now he said gently, you know what to do. Through the snow-filled night she labored, wrapped in his crooked, loving body. He felt her groans on his chest and marveled at his strength as she seized his hand in a vice grip through yet another contraction. The fire settled down into its embers. The kerosene lamp sputtered out. But the light that had surrounded him as he ran from barn to farmhouse now surrounded them both as they labored on through the night. And then, in that darkest hour before dawn, they both saw it, the top of a little carrot head, crowning. Quickly, the young man rose from the daybed, replacing his body with pillows, as the young woman gave one final, powerful push. For a moment, silence. Not deafness, no. Holy silence. And then the baby opened his mouth and let out his first almighty cry. The young man felt it as he held his son, glistening, beautiful, and brand new in his work-worn hands. He placed the baby on the young woman's chest and marveled as its eyes fluttered open and it rooted for its mother's breast. She was beaming with pride. He leaned over and kissed them both, his tears falling like warm raindrops. You were the most beautiful wee mite I had ever seen, said his mother. Shortly after daybreak, the young man left the young woman and the baby to return to the barn. The snowstorm had finally ended, leaving meringue-like snowdrifts in its wake. As he entered the barn, the sunlight shone through the narrow barn windows, catching his breath in its light. He felt the low rumble of his prize Holstein cow's contented moo as she nursed her calf, the smell of fresh milk in the air. And then he turned and saw her, the old black sheep lying perfectly still in her stall, her eyes closed as though asleep. She had died in the night. In the years that followed, the young man never again heard any of his farm animals talk. But a few years later, one early spring morning, he helped to deliver the great-great-great-granddaughter of the old black sheep. It was another breech birth, but this time he knew what to do. And a few months later, one early spring morning, on a glorious May morning, the little boy pedaled his brand new fire engine red tricycle out into the clover-filled meadow in front of the farmhouse. The great-great-great-granddaughter of the old black sheep, all woolly bounce, came bounding up to him. "Bah," she said. "Ba-ba, black sheep, have you any wool?" sang the little boy. The lamb tilted her little black head and stared at the little carrot top. "Bah," she said, and scampered off to her mother across the meadow. And we all said, "Amen," and we all said, "Amen."